I found out my husband has a second wife and kids after 2 decades together. Now I'm faced with the ultimate betrayal and the pain of knowing everything we built was a lie. My name is Sarah, 42F, and I thought I knew everything about my husband, Mark, 44M. We've been married for 20 years, raised 2 kids together, and I had believed we were a solid team. But then I stumbled across something that shattered my entire world. It started innocently enough, a phone call he'd left unanswered. Curiosity got the better of me, and I checked his phone. That's when I saw the messages from another woman. At first, I thought it was an affair, something I could handle, maybe even forgive. But as I read further, I realized this wasn't just a fling. This was something far, far worse. My stomach churned as I scrolled through the messages, each one revealing a shocking new detail. He had another life, another wife, another set of kids. My hands shook as I read the words "our family" and "the kids," followed by the name of a city hundreds of miles away. I couldn't believe it. For years, Mark had been leading a double life, splitting his time between 2 families. How had he managed to keep this from me? How had he lied to me, to our kids, for so long? I felt sick, betrayed in a way I couldn't even begin to comprehend. I knew I needed answers, and I needed them now. When he came home that night, I confronted him, my heart pounding with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "Who is she?" I demanded, holding his phone up as evidence. His face went pale, and he stammered, clearly caught off guard. "Sarah, I can explain," he muttered, looking anywhere but at me. I wanted to scream, to hit him, to make him feel just a fraction of the pain he'd inflicted on me. "Explain? You have another family, Mark. How long has this been going on?" He took a deep breath, his voice trembling. 5 years. 5 years. 5 years of lies, of deceit, of betrayal. I could barely breathe. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. 5 years. He had been living a lie for 5 years, deceiving me, our children, and his other family. "How could you do this?" I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. He looked down, shame etched on his face. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and cold. "You didn't mean for it to go this far. You had an entire other life, Mark. You were playing house with another woman, raising kids with her, and now you're acting like it was just some minor mistake." He reached out, trying to take my hand, but I pulled away, disgusted by his touch. "Please, Sarah, just let me explain," he pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. "I love you. I love our family. I didn't want to lose that." I shook my head, barely able to contain my fury. "You love us. You love us so much that you spent half your time with another family. You lied to me, to our kids. You betrayed us all." He looked down, defeated, and I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew he'd lost everything, but he still didn't seem to understand the magnitude of what he'd done. I spent the next few days in a haze, barely able to function. Our kids noticed something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them. How could I explain that their father had been living a double life? That he had another family, other children, in another state? I felt like I was living in a nightmare, trapped in a reality that didn't seem real. I wanted to scream, to cry, to make him feel the same pain I was feeling. But all I could do was sit in silence, trying to make sense of the betrayal that had torn my life apart. I didn't know how to move forward. Mark tried to apologize, tried to make amends, but every word felt hollow, every promise empty. He would come home, looking defeated, and beg me to talk to him. "We can fix this, Sarah. We can make this work. I'll cut ties with them, I swear." I laughed bitterly, unable to believe his audacity. "You think you can just walk away? That you can erase an entire family as if they never existed?" He looked away, shame flooding his face. "I made a mistake. I was stupid. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." But I knew there was no making this right. He had shattered our lives beyond repair. Finally, I decided to call his other wife, needing to hear the truth from her side. When she answered, I introduced myself, and there was a long, stunned silence on the other end. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't know he was married to someone else." I felt a twisted sense of relief, knowing she was as much a victim as I was. We talked for hours, sharing stories, piecing together the web of lies Mark had spun around us. She had 2 kids with him, children who called him daddy, children who had no idea their father had another family. The depth of his betrayal was staggering. I confronted Mark with everything I had learned, my anger boiling over. "Did you really think you could keep this up forever? That neither of us would find out?" He looked defeated, his shoulders slumping as he sat down. "I don't know. I was stupid. I thought I could keep both lives separate." I laughed, the sound bitter and cold. "You thought you could have it all, didn't you? 2 wives, 2 families, 2 lives. You're a coward, Mark. You destroyed everything." He looked up, tears in his eyes, but I felt nothing. I was numb, my heart shattered beyond repair. He had ruined everything, and there was no going back. Our children began to sense that something was wrong, their innocent faces filled with worry. I couldn't bear to tell them the truth, to shatter their image of their father. But I knew I couldn't keep it from them forever. They deserved to know why their lives were falling apart, why their parents were no longer the solid team they once believed us to be. I felt trapped, torn between protecting them and telling them the truth. Mark begged me to stay quiet, to let him handle it, but I knew he would never tell them the full story. He was a liar, a manipulator, and I was done covering for him. One night, I finally broke down, sitting our kids down and explaining as gently as I could. I watched as their faces crumbled, their innocence stolen in an instant. They cried, asking me why, asking how their father could do something like this. I had no answers, no explanations that could make sense of the chaos Mark had unleashed upon our family. He tried to comfort them, tried to tell them he still loved them, but I saw the doubt in their eyes. They didn't trust him anymore. How could they? He had lied to all of us, shattered the foundation of our family. We were broken, and there was no way to fix it. Mark moved into the guest room, trying to give me space, but every time I saw him, the anger flared anew. He begged me to go to counseling, to try and salvage what was left of our marriage. "We can make it work, Sarah. We can rebuild." I looked at him, barely able to contain my rage. "Rebuild? You destroyed everything. There's nothing left to rebuild." He looked desperate, clinging to the hope that I might forgive him. But I knew there was no forgiveness in my heart. He had torn our family apart, destroyed the trust we once shared. I could never look at him the same way again. He was a stranger, a liar, a man I no longer knew. I started reaching out to friends and family, trying to make sense of the betrayal that had upended my life. I needed support, needed someone to reassure me that I wasn't losing my mind. My best friend, Lisa, 41F, was horrified when I told her the whole story. "How could he do this to you, to your kids?" she asked, her voice filled with anger. "He didn't just cheat, he created an entire other life." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Mark's betrayal wasn't just a mistake. It was a carefully crafted lie, a double life that he had sustained for years. I knew I could never forgive him. As the days turned into weeks, Mark continued to beg for my forgiveness. He tried to justify his actions, tried to explain how he'd gotten caught up in a web of lies he couldn't escape from. "I was afraid," he said one night, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't want to lose either of you." I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed through the room. "You didn't want to lose us. You lost us the moment you decided to live a lie. You destroyed 2 families, Mark. You don't deserve our forgiveness." He looked crushed, but I felt nothing. My heart had turned to stone, hardened by his betrayal. One day, I received a message from his other wife, the woman who had unknowingly shared my husband for years. She told me she had left him, that she was done with his lies. I felt a strange sense of relief, knowing that she was free from his web of deceit. We agreed to meet to talk about the man who had betrayed us both. Sitting across from her, I realized that she was just as broken, just as devastated as I was. We shared stories, piecing together the lies he had told, the double life he had built on a foundation of deceit. We were both victims, bound by the pain he had caused. As I sat there with her, I felt a surge of anger, a fire that burned through the numbness that had settled over me. Mark had done this, had taken 2 lives and twisted them into something ugly and broken. I knew that I had to take control to rebuild my life without him. I wasn't going to let him dictate my future, wasn't going to let his lies define me. I stood up, feeling a sense of purpose, of determination. I was done being his victim, done letting him hold power over me. I was ready to start over, to build a life that was free from his toxic influence. I was finally ready to move on. When I told Mark that I wanted a divorce, he looked devastated. "Please, Sarah, don't do this. We can work through this. I'll do whatever it takes." I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of calm. "You had years to make this right, Mark. You chose to live a lie. Now you have to live with the consequences." He reached for me, desperation in his eyes, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me. You lost that right the moment you betrayed me." I could see the realization dawn on his face, the understanding that he had truly lost me. I walked away, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. I was free. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork and painful conversations. I told our children that we were divorcing, that their father would no longer be a part of our daily lives. They cried, heartbroken by the news, but I knew I was doing the right thing. I was protecting them, shielding them from a man who had built his life on lies. Mark tried to convince me to reconsider, to think about the children, but I refused to listen. He had made his choice, and now he had to live with the consequences. I was done letting him manipulate me, done letting him control my life. I was finally taking back my power. One night, as I was packing up his things, I came across an old photo album, filled with pictures from our life together. I felt a pang of sadness, a sense of loss for the life I thought I had. But I knew that the man in those photos wasn't real. He was a facade, a mask that Mark had worn to hide his true self. I closed the album, feeling a sense of closure. I wasn't going to let the past haunt me, wasn't going to let his lies define me. I had a future to build, a life to reclaim. I was done looking back. I was ready to move forward. I threw myself into rebuilding my life, focusing on my children and the future we could create together. I found a new job, made new friends, and started to piece together a life that was free from Mark's influence. It wasn't easy, but I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known in years. I was no longer living in his shadow, no longer bound by his lies. I was creating a life that was mine, one that was built on truth and integrity. I knew there would still be challenges, but I also knew that I was strong enough to face them. I was finally free, and I wasn't going to look back. Mark continued to reach out, sending letters and messages, begging me to forgive him. He claimed he had changed, that he was a different man now. But I knew better. I had seen the depths of his deception, had felt the pain of his betrayal, and I knew I could never trust him again. His words were empty, his promises hollow. I had moved on, had built a life that was free from his lies. I wasn't going to let him pull me back into his world of deceit. I was stronger now, more resilient. I had survived his betrayal, and I knew I could survive anything that life threw my way. Then one day, I received a call from his other wife. She told me that Mark was trying to win her back, using the same empty promises he had once used on me. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, knowing that she saw through his lies just as I had. "He hasn't changed," she said, her voice filled with bitterness. "He's still the same man, still living in his own fantasy." I nodded, feeling a sense of camaraderie, of shared pain. We had both been victims, but we were both survivors. We had seen through his lies, had broken free from his control. We were stronger without him, and we knew it. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of closure. I had finally let go of the anger, the bitterness, the pain that had consumed me for so long. I was free to create a life that wasn't defined by his betrayal. I focused on my children, on giving them a stable, loving home. I knew they would always carry the scars of their father's actions, but I also knew that they were strong, that they could overcome anything. We were a family, bound by love, by resilience, by the strength we had found within ourselves. We had faced the darkness, and we had emerged stronger, more united. I started dating again, cautiously opening myself up to new possibilities. I met people who valued me, who respected me, and I realized just how much I had been missing. I had lived in Mark's shadow for so long, had been so blinded by his lies, that I had forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen, truly appreciated. I knew I had a long way to go, that there would still be challenges ahead, but I also knew that I was ready. I was ready to embrace the future, to create a life that was filled with hope, with love, with endless possibilities. I had reclaimed my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. Then one day, Mark showed up at my doorstep, looking haggard and desperate. "Sarah, please just hear me out," he begged, his voice trembling. "I've lost everything. I don't have my family, my home, my life. I need you." I looked at him, feeling nothing but pity. "You lost those things because of your own choices, Mark. You built your life on lies, and now you're facing the consequences." He looked down, defeated, his shoulders slumped. "I know I made mistakes, but I'm a different man now." I shook my head, unmoved by his words. "I don't need you in my life, Mark. I've moved on, and I'm not looking back." He looked up, desperation etched across his face. "Sarah, please. We built a life together. We have kids. We can make this work." I laughed, a cold, bitter sound that echoed in the empty hallway. "Make it work. You destroyed everything, Mark. You took our life and ripped it apart. There's nothing left to work with." He reached out, but I took a step back, creating a barrier between us. "You need to leave," I said firmly. "I don't want you here. I don't want you in my life." He looked devastated, but I felt nothing. My heart was hardened, my resolve unbreakable. I had moved on, and I wasn't going back. After he left, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had finally closed the door on that chapter of my life, had finally severed the last ties that bound me to him. I focused on my children, on building a life that was filled with love, stability, and truth. I knew that they would always carry the scars of their father's betrayal, but I also knew that they were strong, that they could overcome anything. We spent more time together, creating new memories, finding joy in the little things. I was grateful for every moment, for every day that we shared. We were a family, bound by love, ready to embrace the future together. As the months passed, I began to feel a sense of happiness I hadn't known in years. I had rebuilt my life, had created a future that wasn't defined by Mark's lies. My children were thriving, growing into resilient, compassionate young people. I knew that we still had challenges to face, but I also knew that we were strong enough to handle them. We had overcome the darkness, had found a way to heal, and I was proud of the life we had built together. I was free from Mark's toxic influence, free to live my life on my own terms. I had reclaimed my future, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away. Then, out of the blue, I received a letter from Mark. He apologized, claiming he had changed, that he was seeking therapy and trying to rebuild his life. He asked for a chance to reconnect, to try and make amends. I read his words, feeling a strange mix of pity and indifference. I had moved on, had created a life that was free from his lies, and I knew that I didn't need him. I wasn't going to let him back into my world, wasn't going to let him disrupt the peace I had found. I tossed the letter in the trash, feeling a sense of closure. I had finally let go, had finally found my way forward. I focused on my children, on creating a life that was filled with love and stability. We spent weekends exploring new places, finding joy in the simple moments, building a future that wasn't haunted by the mistakes of the past. I had found happiness, had created a home that was filled with laughter and light. My children were my world, and I was grateful for every moment we shared together. We had faced the darkness, had come through the storm, and we had emerged stronger, more united. I knew that we were ready for whatever the future held, that we were a family, bound by love, by resilience. I was finally at peace. One afternoon, as we were sitting together, my daughter looked up at me and asked, "Mom, do you think Dad will ever change?" I thought carefully before answering, choosing my words with care. People can change, sweetheart, but it's up to them. They have to want to make that change. She nodded thoughtful, then gave me a small smile. "I'm glad we have you." I hugged her, feeling a surge of love and pride. I knew that we had been through so much, that we had faced challenges that no family should have to face. But I also knew that we had come out the other side stronger, more united. We were a family, and we were ready to move forward. As the years passed, I watched my children grow, watched them become kind, compassionate, resilient individuals. I knew that they carried the scars of their father's betrayal, but I also knew that they had found a sense of peace, a sense of strength. I had given them a home filled with love, had shown them what it meant to stand up for yourself, to choose happiness. I was proud of the family we had become, proud of the life we had created. We had overcome the lies, the betrayal, and the darkness that had once threatened to tear us apart. We were free, and I was determined to protect the happiness we had found together. One day, as I was going through some old boxes, I found a picture of Mark. I looked at it, feeling a mix of emotions, but mostly relief. I had moved on, had built a life that wasn't tied to his mistakes. I was grateful for the lessons I had learned, for the strength I had found within myself. I tossed the photo back into the box, feeling a sense of closure. I didn't need reminders of the past. I had a future to focus on, a life to live. I had reclaimed my happiness, had found a way to move forward. I was finally free, and I wasn't going to look back. I threw myself into my new life, finding joy in the simple moments, in the love and laughter of my children. We spent time together, building new memories, creating a future that was filled with hope and possibility. I knew that we still had challenges to face, that life wasn't always easy, but I also knew that we were strong enough to handle them. We were a family, bound by love, by resilience, by the strength we had found within ourselves. We had overcome the darkness, had found a way to heal, and I was grateful for every moment, for every day that we shared. I knew that our future was bright, filled with endless possibilities. Then, one evening, I received a call from Mark's other wife. She told me that he had tried to reach out to her again, begging for forgiveness, claiming he had changed. We talked for a while, sharing our experiences, our pain, our healing. I felt a sense of camaraderie, of shared strength. We had both been through so much, had both been betrayed by the same man, but we had both found a way to move on. We had both reclaimed our lives, had built futures that weren't defined by his mistakes. I was grateful for her friendship, for the understanding we shared. We were stronger without him, and we both knew it. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of closure, a feeling of peace that I hadn't known in years. I had let go of the anger, the bitterness, the pain that had once consumed me. I was free to live my life on my own terms, free to create a future that was filled with hope and joy. I focused on my children, on giving them a life that was filled with love and stability. I knew that we had come through the storm, had faced the darkness, and had emerged stronger, more resilient. We were a family bound by love, by resilience, ready to embrace whatever the future held. As the years went by, I watched my children grow, watched them become strong, compassionate individuals. I knew that they had faced challenges, had overcome obstacles that no child should have to face, but I also knew that they were better for it. We had built a life together, had created a home that was filled with love and laughter. I was proud of the family we had become, proud of the life we had created. We had overcome the lies, the betrayal, the darkness that had once threatened to tear us apart. I knew that our future was bright, that we were ready to face whatever came our way. We were stronger than ever. Looking back, I realized that leaving Mark had been the best decision I had ever made. I had reclaimed my life, had found a sense of peace that I hadn't known in years. I had built a future that was mine, one that wasn't defined by anyone else's mistakes. I had found happiness, had created a home that was filled with love and joy. My children were my world, and I was grateful for every moment we shared together. I knew that we still had challenges to face, but I also knew that we were strong enough to handle them. We were a family bound by love, by resilience, ready to embrace the future together. Then one day, as I was walking through town, I saw Mark. He looked older, worn down, a shadow of the man he once was. He saw me, and for a moment our eyes met. I felt a strange mix of emotions, but mostly relief. I had moved on, had built a life that wasn't tied to him or his lies. I gave him a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of the past, but I didn't stop. I kept walking, my heart filled with peace, my mind focused on the future. I was free from his influence, free to live my life on my own terms, and for the first time, I truly felt whole. As I walked away, I felt a sense of closure, a feeling of peace that I had never known before. I knew that I had a long road ahead, that there would still be challenges, but I also knew that I was ready. I had reclaimed my life, had built a future that was filled with hope, with love, with endless possibilities. I was freed from the lies, from the betrayal, from the toxic influence of a man who had once held power over me. I was stronger, more resilient, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future held. I was finally at peace, finally free, and I knew that our future was bright.